Yukito's father is the leader of a cult who worships the god named Mitama. Ever since he was born, he has witnessed all sorts of weird rituals and everything. By this point, he's pretty used to it. So when his father mentions that he'll be thrown into the sea, he will survive and come back to become their next leader. But because his body was roped and caged, he won't be able to swim. He yells at his old man, who simply gives him a thumbs up. In the end, Yukito drowns. In his final moments, he remembers that because of his father, he was always a loner at school, always had to bear some unusual training, and could never really have any normal adolescence fun. However, he then opens his eyes and sees a pink-haired girl named Allura. Yukito is smart. He quickly deduces that he's been reincarnated into another world as the isekai protagonist. He asks her to show him the way to the Adventurers Guild. She isn't sure what that means, but realizes that he wants to work. So while he gets all excited that he'll get to be an adventurer and everything, he soon finds himself farming. He wonders if this is some kind of quest. Another farmer, a guy named Roy, makes sure he knows all the girls in the village belong to him. So if he dares lay a hand on any of them, it won't end well. But his fellow Klen tells him to drop the tough guy act. He's then given a blade. Yukito presumes that yes, this must be for killing the goblins, but no, it's just to harvest some grapes. Back in the village, the grapes are used to create wine. They have so much of it that Allura's older sister named Silveril actually pours it over the guys. They seem to be enjoying it. And I'm not gonna kink shame. Time continues to pass, and before long, it's already been a month since Yukito arrived in this village. But all he's done is help on the farm and take care of livestock. He's good friends with Allura, Silveril, Roy, and Klen, as well as the others, but it's the same thing every day. When one day at the farm a monster approaches them, Roy pretends to use magic, which intrigues Yukito, but he was just pretending. All they could do was run away from the CGI monster. Yukito is confused. He grabs Roy and asks him a sincere question. Why did they run away? Why didn't they fight? What about the book? Well, the book Roy was holding is just a strategy book on how to run away from the monsters. Yukito is later surprised to learn that this world has no concept of religion. When he's in a forest, Roy and Allura suddenly show up and tell him about a forbidden book. You can imagine his excitement going down the drain when he realizes that this forbidden book is just a lewd magazine. He goes to the Imperial City to get the lewd magazines. Here, Roy and Allura explain that everything they know was told by the government, which is basically the Empire. And the futuristic building in the distance is the Imperial Palace. At the bookstore, Roy and Allura are a bit underwhelmed because even though they came here for not safe for work material, this looks pretty safe for work. But the crazy part is what Yukito witnesses next. People just casually get executed by Imperial guards. Yukito can't believe it, but Roy and Allura tell him not to worry about it too much. The government just deletes the people who aren't useful. At night, when they're sleeping, he realizes that Allura is in bed with him. Looks like this girl has a pretty lewd mind. Must be the literature. Anyway, when Yukito asks her about what happened this evening and why everyone was calling them deviants, she explains that those who don't align with the government's way of thinking, like basically those who don't want to die whenever the government decides, are banished. This village is composed of said banished people. Allura expresses her feelings on how she's glad that Yukito doesn't think of them as deviants, and, well, since they are the first friends he's ever made, of course he doesn't think of them that way. He even gives Allura the pendant his father gave him. At the same time, Allura's sister, Silveril, is talking about some bad news with Roy and Klen. Next morning, Yukito realizes that Allura and Silveril have been taken away for the execution. Luckily, Klen is ready with the cart. They go to the Imperial City, but it's over. Silveril has already been hanged. Allura was about to be killed by sword when Yukito shows up and beats the NPC guards. But it wasn't enough. He wasn't strong enough to beat their commander, Bertrand. He gets slashed by the sword as well. So as he's lying on the ground next to Allura, losing blood, he finally realizes that he's about to die once again. But unlike last time, when he didn't hold the pendant like how his father told him to, he holds it and pleads for Mitama to come and save them. Right then, in that very moment, a tiny girl appears in the sky. She states that she's been waiting all this time for her to summon her as the next cult leader. Though, when she realizes he's dead, she kills all the guards out of anger and then brings both him and Allura back to life. Silveril and the other victims of the day are also revived. Yukito, Allura, and Silveril return to the village. Everyone's surprised to see that they're still alive. There's a big celebration, but as everyone celebrates, Yukito recalls what happened. As for Mitama, Allura tries to put some clothes on her tiny body, however Mitama just wants to get back to Yukito ASAP. Allura gets jealous, she wonders if they're lovers, but Mitama pats her on her head and comforts her. After this, Mitama intervenes in Yukito's conversation with everyone and then sits on his lap. She then looks at Roy with an expression of pure disgust, but he actually enjoys it. Born to be a masochist, eh? No, Yukito asks Mitama about her powers because that's the only way they can fight the government, but she explains that because she has no believers in this world, she no longer has any powers. So for the time being, Yukito realizes that he needs to get 10,000 people to worship Mitama. Roy becomes her very first worshipper, of course. Mitama, however, is a bit upset because unlike Roy, Yukito himself still doesn't believe in her. She uses her knowledge of his past to impress him, but all she does is list his painful memories. Yukito then tries to talk to the villagers into believing using her fortune telling and things like that, but it isn't very easy. Though when Allura's pet fox dies and she resurrects him using the tiny amount of power she gained from Roy, Allura and Silmaril become believers as well. Allura ends up asking Mitama to resurrect the soldiers who executed them. In her mind, they were innocent, and while Mitama does oblige, the commander named Bertrand is resurrected as a woman. He goes back to the Imperial City, but despite introducing himself properly, the guard shuns him and tells him that he doesn't remember Bertrand being so voluptuous. This was a little hard on him. He lights a little fire in the forest and sits by it to tear up a little bit. Roy shows up with inappropriate things on his mind, but Yukito appears and one-shots him before he could try anything. And then he proceeds to turn Bertrand into a believer by offering him a job as Mitama's Holy Knight. The next day, a CGI monster appears and everyone runs, but Yukito and Mitama summon a sword. However, it is too weak. Thankfully, Bertrand awakens his sword and takes care of the monster. Everyone is grateful to Bertrand, and yes, Yukito quickly takes hold of the situation, introduces the girl as their Holy Knight, and publicizes the religion. He markets Mitama as a mascot character and tells them that they will never have to worry about these strange CGI beasts again. They'll be given complete protection from harms and illnesses, but they'll have to become believers, as this is members only. By this point, Mitama has 100 followers, but he needs more if he wants to go up against the Imperial army. Bertrand is then forced into looking like a lady by Allura and Silmaril, and when he explains that the Imperial army's individual warriors have been granted power abilities by the Emperor. They are called Archon, and they are the ones they have to be wary of. His sword, which he used to slay the monster earlier, was given to him by the Emperor as well. Safe to say, Yukito is intrigued. Subsequently, we see one of these Archons on her way to destroy the village, but she keeps getting slowed down by monsters. Okay, so Yukito recalls his father's words on how religions become popular through martial arts training, and he decides to do the same. In fact, he'll introduce the village to modern-day technology and turn everyone into a believer. A month passes by, and Atar has only just succeeded in arriving at the village. She witnesses Bertrand in a maid outfit, and realizes that she may need to kidnap him to figure out how his gender was changed, but when he further enters the village, she encounters a whole new set of surprises. The village has changed a lot in just a month. Now we have modern-day technology, wind turbines, motor vehicles, industrialized farmlands, and everything. Of course, all of it was summoned by. Each time they capitalize on this and increase her magical prowess due to gaining more followers. And that's how she became able to summon 21st century stuff. However, Yukito knows that deep down what the farmers are really worshipping is the equipment, and not Mitama. They need something else. Luckily, when Allura stumbles and the bucket of water she was carrying falls on her, he realizes that this is what they need. He makes Mitama build a proper water system in the village. The girls get to enjoy wearing swimsuits as usual, especially Silmaril. She wants Allura to wear provocative outfits. Everyone is happy, but Mitama has been drained. While Yukito did make her summon an ungodly amount of water, after all, her followers increase again, though she gets back to her usual cheerful self, but Yukito knows that this is not enough. He's already pondering over what could be their next big move, and like a literal light bulb, it comes to him. Electricity. Yes, he introduces electricity to the village. Girls serve everyone drinks while dressed in bunny girl outfits because of Silmaril, and Mitama's followers increase yet again. By this point, Mitama has close to 2,000 believers. Electricity truly made everyone change their tune. He then looks at the village from a cliff along with Clem and Bertrand. Clem points out that he isn't sure if even the Emperor has seen such a view. Bertrand is curious how he knows so much about the palace considering how he's actually a deviant. Clem reveals that he used to work in the palace, but voluntarily moved to the village because he didn't like the way things were going. Yukito asked why the concept of gods never emerged, even though there are natural disasters and everything, so Clem explains that the assembly under the Emperor always ends up explaining everything. When Mituma's followers finally surpass 2,000, after every single person in the village converts, Mituma starts overflowing with power. For once. The following day, Roy comes running and tells them that Bertrand has been kidnapped. Atar captured him and is interrogating him to learn more, but Bertrand is too tight-lipped for his own good. However, one thing is for sure, Atar is convinced that these technologies are a transgression against the Emperor. Yukito and Mituma show up to save Bertrand. Even though she's up against an Archon, her powers are on the same level. But since her powers tend to run out, Mituma loses the fight. On Yukito's encouragement, she borrows some power from other gods, but that isn't enough either. She gets defeated. By this point, Allura and the others also show up. Atar realizes they're all too far gone, at least in terms of what the Empire stands for, and although she was also exhausted, she unleashes an attack that makes the village implode. But it returns back to normal right away. Atar had been played. It was just an illusion. Clem then enters the chat and tells Atar off. Atar immediately recognizes him, or should I say her. Believe it or not, Clem does not exist. All this time, Loki, the Archon, has been using an illusion disguise. And now she knows that Yukito and Mituma are exactly who she needs to finally assassinate the Emperor. Loki has no qualms about revealing her true identity. Following this fiasco, Loki takes Atar, Yukito, and Mituma to the Emperor, where it's revealed that the Emperor is an illusion, and his castle is just a giant machine. Everything's for the sake of keeping the people in check. This is where Yukito realizes something frightening. He wasn't reincarnated in another world. Now he's just sent thousands of years into the Earth's future, where religion is no more. Loki now wants them to destroy this giant machine called Assembly, as it's the reason why people have no free will anymore. But free will is pretty important, isn't it? Loki and the other Archons, except Atar, tried to destroy the Assembly so that they could become gods, but it hasn't worked out. Loki has also realized that if others believe that she's a god, she can get godlike powers too. She's already tried it. By telling deviant villagers that they're gods, the Archons have become gods. Now, what will it be? Will Yukito take the plunge and destroy the machine? Yes, using Mituma he destroys it, but he also tells the Archons that if Mituma has competition, he will defeat them. Loki parts ways from both Atar and Yukito. She also uses her god powers to turn Bertrand back into a man. He goes back to the Empire with her in hopes of finally being a man for good. Atar, on the other hand, isn't sure what to do. She wonders if she should just die, when Yukito tells her to do what other Archons are doing, become a god and build her assembly. In the wake of this, Atar becomes the second god of the village, right under Mituma. Mituma also shares her powers with her. Subsequently, there's an Archon named Dakini, who already has 10,000 believers. Turns out she manipulated one of people's primal urges, lust. Her religion is based around lust, pervasion, and all of her priestesses are called sluts. Conveniently, Yukito, Mituma, and Roy and Allura go and infiltrate the church. When one of the sluts, named Rish, takes them to Dakini, it turns out they'll have to, well, do the deed. Yukito's locked in a room with Allura, and a powerful magical spell is performed upon them. A spell that heightens lust. Fortunately, his father knew something like this might happen one day, so he had already trained his boy on how to resist lust. We must stay focused, brothers. The Sigma life lies ahead. Mituma shows up and rescues them before they could do the deed, and because that lust energy was still in there, still unused, it needed an outlet. It somehow passes on to Rish. Consider everyone's surprise when they realize that Rish is still a pure maiden. She actually doesn't believe in Dakini's religion and wants Mituma to destroy it. So she asks the gang to help her destroy Dakini's perverted religion, as that is exactly what she's trying to do as well. Though you must be wondering how a deviant like Rish ended up as a chief slut of Dakini. Believe it or not, it was simply because she was too into all that NSFW stuff. This made her a lust expert and got her recruited as the chief slut. Loki shows Bertrand that now there's no assembly to keep them in check, society has begun to fail. Our protagonist, on the other hand, promises to destroy this perverted judge, and so Rish approves their fake membership. Good. Now they're ready to wreak some havoc. By this point, Mituma has started to weaken in strength. It's because of her absence, because she's no longer in the village. The villagers have started worshipping Atar more. Anyway, Yukito wasn't in the mood of hearing excuses. He still makes her summon sexual knowledge, toys, and more. Come on, guys, we're on the internet. You don't need me to explain a whole lot here. She summons it from the 21st century Japan and makes things spicy. Dakini's followers also start worshipping Riche more because, for what it's worth, Dakini is absent from the church. That doesn't sit right with her, of course, so she pulls Roy and brainwashes him by teaching that masturbation is acceptable. This causes him to betray the gang because, well, the guy is literally too horny to be of any help. As for the others, Yukito, Riche, Mitama, and Allura are accused of heresy for what they did, or should I say what they were planning to do. However, Riche is too good when it comes to acting. She gives an Oscar-worthy performance while expressing her loyalty to Dakini and literally begging to be punished for whatever she did. And it works. This causes the followers to worship Riche even more. After all, someone so unapologetically loyal simply couldn't be a heretic, right? Dakini realizes that at this rate there may be a rebellion against her, so she just imprisons the gang for the time being. As for Roy, he affirms that he is loyal only to her and her alone. Now, Yukito immediately starts planning a way to escape the prison, but soon they're visited by the Purgers. These are Dakini's strongest and most loyal bodyguards. As for Dakini, she remembers something interesting. Something important. Back when she was still on a payroll, the Assembly created her power to basically restrict human love. It was to ensure that the population can be kept under control. The babies were grown artificially. This was obviously a long time ago, and well, over thousands of years, humans have now become infertile. They're incapable of love and reproduction. So for the most part, Dakini's plan was to use NSFW stuff to reawaken the desire for sex in humans, and she's been able to do that in a small majority of people. This one time there was a deviant named Toka who actually got pregnant. Yes, Dakini's efforts bore fruit, but she was murdered, and well, since then Dakini has sworn to teach humans how to fall in love and have babies the normal way again. A noble cause, I must say. Going back to Yukito and the gang, the Purgers didn't look like good news. Thankfully, Atar and Sillaril show up and save the day. But at this point, Atar is seriously strong. She was being worshipped by over 6,000 of Mitama's believers. For what it's worth, she can easily defeat the now weakened Dakini all by herself. Or so they think. Dakini goes on to reveal that although Riche may have stolen her followers, she's still being worshipped by over 14,000 of them. By the way, about Toka, the girl who was killed for getting pregnant, her child survived, and we already know who that is. Care to guess? It's Riche. Yep, Riche is the original daughter of Toka. The battle takes place between Dakini and our gang. She infects Atar, Allura, and Sillaril with almost uncontrollable lust, and so our three girls just gang up on our main character, thirsty and desperate to have a piece of him. Mitama enters the chat again and rescues him. Although she's lacking in terms of followers, she is a real god, unlike the Archons. That's why just by borrowing Riche's 1,500 followers, she's able to overpower and defeat Dakini. Right after the fight is over, Mitama has won. Dakini tries to run away, but Roy catches her. As it turns out, our boy Roy was just pretending to be Dakini's follower. Not really. Yukito told him if he betrays Dakini, Mitama would actually lust for him, and man, this boy really wants some of that. Anyway, it's Dakini's complete loss. She starts crying after realizing that Riche is Toka's daughter, and it was actually her who was trying to destroy human love, not Assembly. This makes the others feel a bit for her, and to sort of return things back to how they were, they do this. Riche apparently betrays Yukito so that Dakini can start leading her church again, and well, this allows Yukito and the gang to get away without any major animosity from Dakini's followers. But what was all of this for? Well, the good news is that Mitama now has 10,000 followers. She's finally become a full-blown god again. Riche's followers are now hers. Though when they return back home, they learn that random monsters completely ruined the village. Remember, Arthur and Sillaril had come to see Yukito and the others, so there was no one to protect the village. Right after regaining her powers, Mitama uses them to restore the village, and soon after, an Archon named Gaia shows up and explains that she just accidentally let the monsters destroy the village. She totally didn't mean to do that. The thing is that it's her job to control the monsters and keep them in check, and because she only has 2 believers, her power is too weak. She can't keep the monsters under her control. She also doesn't agree with the current infighting between Archons, but what can she do? Eventually, they all visit the city again, and this time it turns out that Loki has built a giant wall around it. Bertrand is still a maiden, so there's that. Loki is a menace considering how she now has over 1 million followers. When Yukito learns about this, he just laughs it off, takes Bertrand with him, and leaves. This confuses Loki because, obviously, 1,120,000 followers is no small number. Although when Yukito returns back to the village with the others, he sighs. Yeah, it was just a tough guy act. In reality, he has no idea what to do about Loki. Can't even begin to comprehend how strong she must be considering her followers. Bertrand then reveals that Loki is running the society as the new emperor. This causes Yukito to rationalize that the people must have an obligatory loyalty to the old emperor, which is now transferred to Loki. That explains why Loki has such a big number of followers. But how do they counter it? All they need to do is make Mitama more popular than Loki. That's how they'll be able to steal Loki's followers. So how is he gonna do that? Well, this is where Yukito comes up with the brilliant idea of turning Mitama into a teen idol. So in the wake of this, he forms an actual idol group. Speaking of the members, we have Allura, of course, Big Sister Silmaril, Gaia, and Altar, a fine group of beautiful ladies. They get really popular really fast, especially because music is deemed a special novelty since the Assembly had previously erased it all. Their band isn't just a band, it's a pioneer when it comes to music. Another thing Yukito realizes is that the devotion of the followers matters as well. Mitama may very well be able to defeat Loki even with fewer followers as long as her followers are more devoted to her. And thanks to the idol band, that is exactly what happens. Amidst of all this, Gaia starts acting sus, so Yukito makes Bertrand spy on her, but as it turns out, she has adopted a few children, who are now her small little group of followers. However, this seriously catches Yukito's attention. A kid's devotion for a parent is practically immeasurable. At this rate, Gaia could become invincible. But before that, he has to deal with Bertrand, who has somehow developed a crush on him. Yeah, I don't even know how that happened. Don't worry, though. It's just a prank by Dakini. Although it does imply that Bertrand has fully started to acknowledge and accept his female body and mind. Dakini has become a fan of their music as well, and looks like her followers play their music while they're doing naughty things. Out of caution, Yukito keeps Gaia preoccupied with idol training and lets Dakini take care of the children instead. But the eldest two are still loyal to Gaia. They also possess Gaia's abilities to control monsters, which they use to attack Dakini. Gaia soon enters the chat. The two kids are so happy to see her that you almost want to hate Yukito for pulling what he did. But hey, let's talk about what happens next. She simply reveals that she doesn't need them anymore, and then summons her most powerful monster. It's Typhon, the living fortress, and then makes the monster absorb the two kids. What in the world just happened? Anyway, Allura and Silmaril show up with a truck because things seem to be going south, but Gaia's son, named Yushi, tells them that Typhon is loyal to Gaia. In fact, once this monster is summoned, he can be controlled even without using magic. Another interesting thing about Typhon is that Gaia based the monster on a book she read, a book from before the Assembly revolutionized everything for the worst. Still, Typhon attacks the truck and ends up eating both Yukito and Mitama. Now, if they aren't here, their religion will crumble. Typhon is a fortress, so inside there are rooms. It's like a castle. There's Mitama, and there's also two of the kids from before. Yukito wakes up, and outside, Gaia reveals that she's already killed him like 300 times. But every time, Mitama's love brings him back to life. He is immortal. Gaia then explains the old civilization. It's that civilization that created the Archons through genetic engineering. But there were some humans who rejected science to live in nature. As it turns out, Gaia's mother used to be a leader of such group. She also used her as a tool to gain political power. In the end, Gaia couldn't take it anymore. She killed her mother and ran away, then became an Archon for the government, but through it all, she was sick and tired of leaders manipulating people for their selfish goals or whatever they wanted. In her mind, Yukito's doing the same thing her mother did. And sure enough, Yukito realizes his mistake. He realizes that he's become much like his father. But is that really the case? After all, everyone in the village chases Typhon while vibing to Mitama's music. They want Gaia to release him and Mitama. All of the villagers empower Atar with their beliefs so that she can attack Typhon, but it doesn't work. Well, it does. It just heals itself. Now, guys, one thing you have to remember is that Yukito had yet to fully believe in Mitama. But in the wake of these circumstances, as Mitama begins to fully believe in her so that she can get them out of there, he gives in. He declares his belief in Mitama and... Nah, he was only kidding, which obviously angers her. Atar, on the other hand, fixes the situation by telling her followers that she's retiring, and that's why she wants them all to believe in Mitama instead. They don't agree until Rish formally announces that Atar will be joining Dakini's cult. This causes her horny followers to follow her lead, and just like that, Mitama is freed. She restrains Typhon and then stabs Gaia in her heart. Typhon literally implodes and everyone is freed. One of the two elder kids tries to kill Gaia because she betrayed them, but the other one intervenes because regardless of what she did, all Gaia wanted was a family. It's all good. Gaia and the kids reconcile. Yukito realizes that Mitama's current follower count is 30,000 followers. Nothing in comparison to Loki's followers, but at least it's over 9,000, right? Speaking of Loki, she shows up to talk to Yukito in private and recalls that she actually gave Mitoma some of her believers so that she could stop Typhon because, well, she didn't want to enter battle herself. After saying this, she tells Yukito that she'll be waiting for them at the capital. Anyway, the gang makes Yukito join the victory celebrations, and I guess that's where the first season of Kamikatsu ends. Do make sure to check it out, guys. It will make you laugh, I promise. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one. And hey, for those of you who are still sticking around, I'm doing a full month of a charity live stream over on my Twitch channel that you can find a link for in the description down below.